Today, my guest is LA musician Jack Name. His most recent album came out last year, and it's an intimate and delicate record called Magic Touch, which I'll link to in the description. Outside of his solo work, his songs have appeared on albums by bands US Girls and White Fence, and he's also been a producer for people like Cass McCombs. Jack, what kind of records were you listening to as a teenager? Because that's usually the time when people really start finding their own sound, isn't it? Finding the perfect thing that they like to listen to.
Well, when I was really young, I learned how to play guitar, like listening to like Nirvana and like Sonic Youth and stuff like that. And I found out about the Velvet Underground, and then someone in high school showed me about Crass, and you'd find out about all sorts of just random sort of things, because at that point the internet wasn't a thing yet, that was, or at least not for, kids at that age finding out about that stuff.
Were you sharing mixtapes and that kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. And like, so it'd be like random thing, like you'd have a, like I think I had a girlfriend when I was 14 that showed me like Skinny Puppy and, like Pig Face or something, and then, other friends, like an older kid would show you about Crass and, just some sort of obscure punk stuff, and it was all pretty random.
Did you get into much underground music?
I was kind of living in I lived in a like up in the mountains when I was in high school, so there wasn't a lot of, I guess not, like I wasn't really into any kind of like hardcore scene or anything like that. Like we kind of had to make music for each other, so without knowing it, I guess maybe we were, but depending on what you mean by underground, I guess it's hard for me to say. But a lot of stuff like scenes didn't really resonate with me. Like I remember kids that were into like hardcore, like punk scenes, like it felt kind of, I just didn't relate to it seemed like there was a lot of camaraderie there, which in some weird way kind of maybe turned me off, like seeing guys like arm in arm singing along with the Germs or something like that, it was like.
What was it about that you found off-putting?
I don't know. I think I felt instantly kind of othered. It was the same thing as like sports, and how like these people all understand how this world works and what this thing is, and I just don't get it, and I didn't feel invited or something. I don't know. Like I felt somehow apart from it.
The reason I use the word underground is because that's a word that I've read in reviews of your music. People talk about you, and the word scene, interestingly, comes up a lot as well, as you're part of the underground music scene in LA. Do you think that's fair? Are you happy to be categorized in that way?
Only because I think that it leaves a lot of negative space, which is kind of fun. But I think that it doesn't really, like I couldn't tell you what the underground scene in LA is, to be honest with you. Like I don't know if it exists. I don't know if there's, there's not like a bunch of bands and stuff that I'm hanging out with. I have like, a small number of friends that I'm close with, and some of them sometimes play music with me, or I have friends that are musicians, of course, and stuff, but it's not like there's some, although I guess maybe if underground has something to do with kind of just obscure sort of places where nobody's looking, then I would say that's true and that's fair, and I would agree.
Do you consider scenes to mean more that there's a group of bands or artists who sound similar, or is it much more to do with the approach and the location of them writing songs?
I think it's just more to do with accidental factors, like just who's around what and where, and who gets along, or like who has the same, like it's like could come down to just like who drinks at the same bar, and like, oh, like on this one night, maybe in your town, like on Tuesdays, this one person DJs and their friends go there, and some people met at that place, it's just some simple little thing like that. I feel like in retrospect, we give it all this sort of, like, it seems kind of like, it's like conspiracy theories or something, where you can look at an event, retrospectively and sort of, and say, oh my God, it must have been this guy met that guy, and then of course this thing happened. But really in the moment, it's just circumstances unfolding, there's nothing really planned about anything. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, yeah. I think if you were going out there looking for a scene or looking for something to be part of, it never would happen. It would happen to, you'd need it to sort of come around on its own, wouldn't you? I think that would only feel like a real thing that way.
Yeah, and you usually don't even notice it when it's happening, and then it's like once it's kind of over, it's like, oh wait, that was cool. We had like a thing going, because they only last like 3 to 5 years tops, probably.
You sort of came up in the early 2000s. How much do you think it's changed, that kind of thing, since then? Did you feel like there was more of a scene then, or more of a sort of community attitude to things then, or is it sort of been quite consistent since then?
Actually, I feel like I talk with my friends about this a lot. That I personally feel like sometime around, I don't know if it was like between 2008 or 2010, like sometime in that space of time, like I think probably like smartphones became more. They just became the norm, and maybe social media stuff too became, maybe that got even more intense like the years following that. But I feel like because of that, I mean, this is just my theory. I don't know if you would agree or if you feel like you've seen the same thing happen, but it seems like because of that stuff, there's been less interaction with people in terms of like just starting bands and being together in the same ways, and I think that things have changed a lot, but I think it's just because of that.
I spoke to a poet the other week called Maggie Smith, and she had a poem go viral, which is obviously something that only could have happened since social media has changed and things like that. And I'm sure you're aware that people often come to your music through the internet nowadays. And I was wondering if you ever consider when you're writing an album that that's the way they come to it. Does that change the way you write? And is there a song that you think I'd be happy for that to be the first one that people heard? Is there like an entry song that you'd like people to go away and listen to?
I guess I've made peace with the fact that people will hear things that way, but I still like when I still make albums. I guess it's all like I would prefer everybody just listen to the whole thing in one sitting in the order that it's in, because that's like the sequence of it, and everything is kind of like the first song on the album is the first song I would want the person to hear, and or at least when I've made it, that's how I felt about it. I accept that people listen to things kind of out of order and in whatever way they're going to listen to now, but I still love like a traditional kind of album experience.
Your newest album came out last year, named Magic Touch, and I was wondering if that was an album that was influenced in any way by the lockdown, because having heard some albums that came out before that, the new one, Magic Touch, is a lot more gentle, a lot more personal. It sort of feels like it could have been influenced by spending a lot of time on your own in your house. Is that true? And can you tell me a little bit about the background behind Magic Touch?
I guess I was spending a lot of time at home, but it was before the lockdown, actually. Like, I finished it probably like 18 months before it came out, I think. So that was more just inspired by, I guess, just reflecting on just personal situations and patterns. Yeah, just kind of doing a deep dive into my own personal stuff. And then it just happened to be that when it was ready to come out, the rest of the world kind of was forced into a similar place, maybe. So it was kind of just a lucky coincidence, I guess.
Do you feel that helped people understand the album a bit better?
I don't know. I guess I don't have really a good idea of how, because I've also been locked up, so without being able to tour or anything, like I don't really have a good idea of how it was received much at all. I'm kind of in the dark myself, but possibly.
Do you ever read your own reviews?
Yeah, I have, and sometimes it's a bummer, and sometimes it's cool. Usually, it's I generally tend to not like reviews though, and I mean, I think it's a strange feeling. I don't know, because I mean, sometimes the person will be saying something that's just wrong, you know, and it's kind of, it's interesting. I don't know, to read criticism of your stuff.
There's a song on the album called Empty Nights, which I think is an interesting one because it's something that I've not heard before. Is there's a second voice on the song that's singing to you, and I was wondering if you could tell me, firstly, if you wrote the lyrics for that part, and secondly, why you thought it was interesting to have a bit of a conversation on the song like that.
Yeah, I did write those lyrics. I wrote that song I wrote that song a pretty long time ago, and I guess it was I had an idea a long time ago to do a whole entire album of duets, and I think I wrote maybe like 4 songs that were like, and then I just moved on to a different idea, I think, at that point. But just trying to have like a conversation that can't really, or that generally doesn't happen in a lot of relationships when the relationship's kind of falling apart. It's like if both people could be totally honest, they might say some of these things, you know.
What do you think is coming next for your music then? Do you think if you wrote your album 18 months before it came out last year, then is it fair to assume that you've already got a fair few new songs coming out? You've had this extra time and you've got another tour coming up maybe?
I do have a lot of sketches I'm going to start recording actually next week. I'm going to start working on a new album. And I don't really know exactly what it's going to be like. Like when I first started making Magic Touch, I kind of thought it was going to be like a synth jazz album or something like that. And it turned out to be completely different than what it was. So I have no idea what it's going to end up being like. But hopefully it'll be something different, because I don't like to... You know, you don't want to repeat yourself if you can help it, I guess.
Jack, what would you like to offer up as your Who's Flying the Plane hidden gem?
There's a composer named Morton Feldman, and he's one of my favorite composers. He was like a contemporary of John Cage, and there's actually a series of 4, like maybe hour-long conversations between John Cage and Morton Feldman that you can find pretty easily on the internet. And those, I think, it's just long conversations about, you know, just 2 people talking about being artists and different things they're going through and different things they're thinking about and responsibilities, or, you know, just all sorts of different aspects of what it's like to just be an artist. And I think that for anybody, probably anybody at all, but especially people who are involved in any kind of artistic pursuit, could take a lot of comfort in those conversations. It's just, yeah, it's comforting to listen to these 2 people kind of going through all these same things that a lot of people could probably relate to.
So Jack, how can we keep up to date with what you do and hear your music? Have you got anything in the pipeline for plans in terms of a tour or anything like that?
At the moment, no. I think, you know, everything's still kind of up in the air as far as what's happening, but I'm hoping to be in Europe or the UK and sometime maybe in the spring of this year, if possible. Or would that be spring of 22? The time is like this weird vacuum now.
Yeah, I think it would be, I think we just...
oh yeah, it is spring now. Next
it's spring now. Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks a lot for having a chat to me, Jack. I appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise.